Hi friends, welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to be installing a Big 3, Big 4 conversion on our Toyota 4Runner.
If you happen to miss the first episode on this series where I actually covered all the hardware that we're going to be using for today, I'll actually put that link up top for you to go ahead and review. This should be fairly easy.
Them's fighting words.
This should be fairly easy. You just jinxed the whole thing.
I know I did.
There's always room for little surprises.
No surprises. Don't put that in the universe. Please don't do that.
Plan to plan.
Yeah. Just a couple of things real quick. Make sure, since we are working around batteries, if you have hanging jewelry, necklaces, you have rings on your finger, either put the gloves on or take them off in order to avoid some very, very bad situations. What we went ahead and did was set everything out so we have it all prepared and ready to go on each step that we have. All right, we've got our various size wrenches, we've got our battery terminals, we have positive wire, we have 3 ground wires, we've got our heat gun for the heat shrink, we have a wire bolt cutter that we're going to be using to actually cut the wire to size. Then we have our copper ring terminals, we've got our old school crimper, a nice old school ball peen hammer, and then our anti-seize, and then the last bit of the heat shrinks. One thing that I did fail to do amongst feeling that I was totally prepared and had everything is I missed out that I have one missing ring terminal. So we're going to do the big 3. We'll map out where the final 4th ground wire is going to end up going. And I'll just end up ordering that, and I'll have to go back and finish that later on this week. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, the very first thing we're going to go ahead and do is take out the battery. Do you want to handle that?
Do I want to?
I'll do the lifting.
Do I want
I'll get
to?
it out of there if you want to go ahead and take care of all the battery cables, as well as taking off the battery hold down.
Good Lord, you got a lot of stuff going on over here.
Exactly. That's why we're doing this. There you go.
All right. I'm going to have to try to hold this out of the way while you pick up on it.
Okay, so we've got the battery out, obviously, and from here we're going to end up just tracing the wires. We've got our ground wire that's going to go down to the block, so we have to trace that. We have one that's coming and already drilled and mounted into the chassis, so that'll save us from having to find another place to screw a new hole into. We'll just reuse that and then take off the old wire. And then I have a couple of others that actually go to some of the lights and the bus bar that will add into the upgraded battery terminal. And the same thing for our positive. We'll trace that down to the alternator and go ahead and run the new wires. All right, so we have our first ground ran to the chassis. Now, I'm going to hold off on cutting this until we get the battery back in because I want to make sure that I have it the exact size that I need it. I'm big on wire management, so I don't want it too long and I have to tuck it into places. I'd much rather get the battery back in towards the end and take care of this one. So I'm going to go ahead and move over to our positive wires and start to pull off some of the extras that are just kind of in the way right now. All right, you got your power wire and your ground that goes through this wire loom right here and then gets held on by this retaining strap. Retaining strap is a 10mm bolt that holds into the bottom of the battery tray. And then what you'll end up doing once you take that out, right, you'll put a Phillips or a flat tip screwdriver right into this groove, and that way you can open this clip up and have full access to your cables and have to cut the remaining part of the wire loom in order to be able to finish tracking them on where they go. I'll join you guys back here momentarily. Okay, so I cut the wire loom all the way down to the alternator bracket. Now, a word of caution, there is a wire that comes out of the fuse box. A portion of it has the protective casing on it. The other portion of it, there are just individual wire strands. So if you're going to use a box cutter or wire clips in order to cut the wire loom off, be very, very cautious so you do not cut any of those wires and just be completely ass out. But once you get down to the very bottom to the alternator bracket, there is one more small bolt that will have another one of the retaining clips that we need to take off in order to have the free cables that go up to the alternator themselves. So I'll follow back with you shortly.
Okay, this is the bottom where the wires go down, as you can see here. They'll come down. That bracket that I was mentioning about is right there. See if I can get it to, there we go. You'll see one bolt that I've taken out, and then the second bolt is to the right of it. Once I can take that bolt out, we should be able to actually remove the wires running up to the alternator. Now your main power wire will be bolted onto the top of the alternator from here. It's going to have a plastic covering that has pins that go over each of these grooves on each side. Once you take off that plastic cover, there's going to be a 10mm bolt. There will expose the 10mm nut. My bad. Once you take that off, then you can remove this main wire from the rubber harness and follow it up to the fuse box here. Now this whole panel piece will end up sliding up. On the side there are two pins holding it in place. Once you free those with that flat tip, small flat tip screwdriver from the top, then you can slide the entire piece out. Just like this. The positive wire that we're going to run from the top of that fuse box over to the top of the alternator. So we'll go ahead and get that started now. Now I'll show you this. Since we're going to run our 1/0 gauge wire directly into the fuse box to replace the OEM wire, you'll see we're a little tight. It's not quite going to fit. So I'm going to take the Dremel and just sand this one groove, this one edge down just enough to where our wire will go in and have a solid, nice tight fit. So I'll come back as soon as I get that done. Now we'll go ahead and test fit this just to make sure it's the right length before we put the final ring terminal on. All right, nice and solid. I'll go ahead and get this bolted up, and then I'll come back and show you how it looks finalized. All right, I've got the positive bolted back into the fuse box, and then you can see that we've got it bolted into the top of the alternator right down there. So everything looks good. Wire isn't resting on the block. Everything should be protected up pretty well. Since our last check-in, we made some progress. I had definitely jinxed us by saying this should be fairly easy, because it's turned into a big pain. As we showed you earlier, this is the wire retaining, I don't know whether it's a clip, whether it's a big piece, but showed you earlier that there are 2 screws that hold it in, or 2 bolts that hold in the top. And then on the back is actually 4 retaining clips, and hopefully you'll be able to see those. When these are wrapped around the wires, there is no way to free the clips from the front. So I had to take a screwdriver and come in from the back in order to release those clips and pry this off of all the wires. So, got that piece done. Finished tracking the wires back to where they needed to go with the starter and the frame and the block. So I'll go ahead and show you those now on where we have to take them apart. Okay, as you can see, we had to take the wheel off. There's just no way to work around these 33s in order to get back to where those wires were. Now we have a lot easier way to be able to reach in. So, Dana, you want to point out what we have to do? All right, so we have the ground to the frame right there at our red pointer. All right, your ground with black wire with blue stripe comes out of the heat shield down and bolts into the block. All right, we're going to go ahead and take off those grounds from the frame and the block, and we'll check back in with you once we're done. Since our last check-in, we were able to take off the black and blue ground wire that we showed in the last piece that was actually bolted to the block. So we got that off. Now, have the new wire and extra hardware that came in today. Thanks, Amazon. Perfect timing. So we've got everything ready to go. We're going to go ahead and bolt this up in the stock block location, stock block, and run it up to the battery. Go ahead and get everything basically in place. Make sure everything starts up before we do the final bolt down, zip tie-in, and cable cradles back where they're supposed to be. So we'll be back. Would you like to start it? Let me be the one to die if it explodes.
Like, start the engine?
Yep.
Start it?
Yep, start it. Okay, let it, wait.
Let it what?
Okay, now go ahead. Shit.
A few moments later.
Well, I go back once again and say that I should not have said that it was going to be easy. The biggest issues with this were the devices that hold the cables together because they are so incredibly difficult to reach. And I made one critical error at the very end of putting all the cables back. We have so many cables, I thought that I had everything there. And we had power to everything, but it would not start. So off camera, we were doing a little troubleshooting, trying to figure out what in the hell it could be. And as I'm looking through fuses, possibly one was blown, hooking everything back up. Dana had the good sense of mind of going back and tracing all the wires and found out that the one wire to the starter was not connected. So thanks, babe.
You're welcome.
In exhaustion and thinking that it was something else that was easy, we didn't think of, or at least I didn't think of immediately, the most easiest reason for it. So it's good to have a second set of eyes. No doubt at all. It definitely helped out in this matter. But everything is hooked up. Everything is running. The only thing that's left is to put the battery tie down on. And that's it. The project is done. It's a success. And I'll show everybody what the final picture looks like now. All right, so finished product. Battery terminals look fantastic. The extra bolts on those really made it easy to run everything that we have on the 4Runner right now. And all the zero gauge tightened up beautifully. We've got all three of our grounds, plus our upgraded power, and I couldn't be happier. We hope you enjoyed this. If you're doing an upgrade on your 4Runner, go ahead and post up some comments. Let us know if this helped you out. Please go ahead and like it so that way it's shared with many others that are looking for the same type of content. And if you haven't subscribed, why not? Go ahead and follow us along on these crazy, dirty adventures that we have.
Crazy for sure.
Yeah. And sweaty. Damn sweaty. But fun. All right. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe. See you next time.